Welcome those that have joined. We're just waiting until 1 o'clock and then I'll start. Welcome everybody. Thank you for attending today. I'm delighted to be here to introduce to you all about sensory integration and how the environment impacts our functioning as human beings. So today I'll be providing you with the neuroscience behind this, and we'll explore how different environments can influence this. I really hope today this will spark your curiosity about neuroscience and about how the senses and the environment work together. So this is going to be the contents of today's webinar. At OT for me, where I'm based, we believe every young person deserves that chance to thrive in spaces that celebrate, not challenge, the way their brain experiences the world. So by partnering with families, educators, businesses, we break down those barriers, we build independence, and we boost confidence. So by empowering young minds, not just for today, but for a lifetime. So we at OT for me very much champion individuality, and we create opportunities and we transform lives. We're a very small team of occupational therapists with postgraduate training in sensory processing. And we support children through really young ages, through teenage years, up until adulthood. We work with a large number of neurodiverse individuals and families using our PEO model, which is person, environment, occupation. This helps them to enable them to participate in meaningful activities, whether at home, in school, if it's an older child, teenager, at work, during play and leisure. As humans, we all need to be productive and maintain occupational balance. When this balance is lost, it leads to occupational deprivation, which can result in a deterioration in mental and physical well-being and increased social, economic, cultural, and spiritual risks. So this is just a bit of a disclaimer before we kind of deep dive into the content. Sensory processing is a really complex process. It's based on anatomy and physiology. Each individual will have a unique sensory profile with their own strengths and their own challenges, and they must be properly understood by the correct qualified clinician. Any clinical recommendations or accommodations should be tailored specifically to their assessed needs rather than applied generically. So the information you're getting today, it doesn't qualify you to conduct formal sensory integration assessments or provide any therapeutic interventions. It's just some generic strategies that I'm going to discuss with you at the end. A thorough risk assessment must be completed for each individual that we support implementing any sensory tools or environmental modifications. And like I said earlier, sensory assessments should be conducted with a qualified occupational therapist, addressing those significant sensory processing concerns that are impacting that child's day-to-day functioning. Today, I'll be discussing some areas that could be a little bit challenging in terms of how sensory processing impacts function. Please do please email me after the training if you'd like to discuss anything further. So this slide here represents a flower, which I often bring into training. So when a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment, not the flower. And that is very, very much what OT for me stands for and what sensory processing applies to with the environment. So I'm hoping that this is going to help you understand the bigger context of it all. So who am I? To set the scene, I'm going to introduce myself and I will be quick, I promise. It just will help you understand who I am and why I'm talking about what I'm talking about today. I got into the health profession because I had family members who experienced significant mental health challenges and they were often misunderstood. This very much sparked my curiosity about health, education, and the social economy and how they all influence one another. We're all different. We all have different lived experiences. I myself was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was 12, a very long time ago. And one of my sons is currently on the ADHD pathway, and he has significant sensory processing challenges. In my professional career, I've worked across many services. I spent the majority of my career in the NHS, working in secure services alongside the police, mental health services, including inpatient and community. I've worked in colleges, schools, clinics, communities, universities, and workplaces. I've been really fortunate in my career to support people across the lifespan, from babies to adults, from locked, medium secure environments with really enduring mental health issues to the other end with the spectrum, with working in the community or working with children and teenagers who are facing burnout. I've been very fortunate in my career because this has given me a really good, wide perspective of how challenges for individuals can present at different stages of their lives. I've completed my postgraduate training in sensory integration, which involves that in-depth study about anatomy, physiology, about assessment and intervention. And I plan to go on and do my master's to research further in sensory processing as well. And I'm very much developing an interest in about the neuroscience and the environment and how they impact each other, and also around ADHD as well and sensory processing needs within that. So I'm going to talk to you about some statistics. These align with the general population estimates. So as you can see here, these statistics highlight sensory processing challenges within neurodiverse populations. And most recently within ADHD, there's a lot of research out there about autistic individuals who have sensory processing challenges, but more research is emerging now with the ADHD population as well. So therefore, this influences the importance of supporting neurodivergent individuals, whether it's at home, it's in education, it's in the workplace, but it's about improving that health and that well-being and that productivity. I'm really only scratching the surface today. This webinar is very much just an introduction for you all to kind of give you some more understanding of it. The anatomy and physiology is very complicated, and we spend a lot of time as OTs looking at the best evidence-based, most comprehensive assessment tools to really understand and analyse what patterns that we are seeing, because then this helps us identify their functional strengths and their challenges in daily life in terms of what participation challenges in their occupations do they have. So the aim of this session is to help you understand what sensory needs are and how the environment impacts them. So we need to evaluate sensory environments because this helps identify potential triggers, and then we can implement strategies and support to help with mental health, to help with executive functioning. So ultimately, we're making a big difference and making environments more inclusive for everyone. So why does sensory integration matter? So in short, sensory integration basically refers to our brain. And basically, it's how our brain receives information from outside our body, interprets it, and then produces an effective response. So your brain relies on information, sensory information, to inform in order to function properly. And we receive this information through our sensory receptors, which then send signals via the central and peripheral nervous system to the brain. The brain then processes this information and then it tells our body how to respond. And this is what creates function. So a really nice example I like to do is, say this was a hot cup of tea and I'm grabbing it with my hand. So I'm holding it. My tactile receptors will pick up the sensation of heat through and your tactile sense is your skin, and your skin is your biggest organ on your body. This then is interpreted and sent to the brain. The message is processed. It says the function is let go, sends the message back down, and then let go. So this is what I'm talking about. So it's processing it quickly and it's telling me to pull my hand away. So sensory integration theory is based on neuroplasticity, the idea that the brain can change. So when neurons fire, their connections become stronger, which supports learning and memory. Therefore, the environment has a huge impact on productivity and mental health. So not only at home, school, but also in the workplace, but all areas of life. It impacts all humans. So why is it so important? Why am I continuing to wave the flag for sensory processing? It supports our brains basically to integrate and organize information, that's sensory information, and it helps us make adaptive responses, which basically means changes to the brain. So that can help us support with learning and growth. Sensory integration enables us to engage in everyday activities such as playing, learning, working, developing skills, building a sense of self, self-regulating, and interacting socially. Sensory input informs the foundations for all learning and development, and it develops during early childhood. And when it's not well developed, it can present with some challenges. So during your early years of life, we roll, we crawl, we walk. However, if sensory processing is having a few challenges in those systems, it can lead to some difficulties with engaging in everyday activities. So as you can see on this slide, there's a neuron on the right-hand side, and this is how sensory information is processed to the brain. So each sensory system will use the neurons to communicate back and forward to the brain. So like I talked to you about holding the cup, there's loads and loads of neurons in your hand, which is taking that message to your brain and then bringing the message back. As specialist therapists, we really study this anatomy and physiology at a postgraduate level, so we can really understand the neuroscience of what is happening and how that impacts function. And then we can then look at getting the right assessments and treatment to support it through intervention. So basically, within the neuron here, this is your myelinated sheath, and your message is traveling through here, and your dendrites are here, and you've got a neurotransmission. So the hot cup, the information's got here through the tactile sense. It's come into the neuron, it's gone down the myelinated sheath, it's come down here to the dendrites. It then releases that neurotransmission to the next neuron and the next. And that is what is sending the information to the brain and then sending it back. So that's what we're talking about. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it. On other webinars, I go into a lot more depth, but today we're just doing a bit of an introduction. So these are the 8 senses that I'm talking about. I don't have time today, unfortunately, to go through each sense separately and explain their roles, but I'll try and briefly go over some important areas I think you need to know about. So we have 8 senses in total. Quite a lot of people think we have 5, but actually we have 8. So we've got obviously vision, which is taking information in through your eyes. And you've got receptors in your eyes that take that in through and then it's processed in the back of the eye. We then have hearing, which is auditory. And that's through your ears. That information, the sensory input comes through your ears. We have olfactory, which is smell. So any information that we want to know about food or smells of the area or people comes through our nose. We have tactile, which we've talked about, which is touch. This is your biggest organ on your body, and you've got lots of receptors in this, very densely populated on your fingertips, your mouth, and in your groin to help us kind of interpret and discriminate what we're feeling. We also have taste, gustatory. That is how we take information of food and drink and taste in our mouth to help us interpret what it is. We have proprioception, which is body awareness, and this is your receptors are in your muscle spindles and in your joints, so you can take information from where your body is positioned, but also kind of it's sending information about body position and about awareness of where your body is. We've then also got the vestibular system, and this is the system which detects balance, but it also is really important. It closely works with proprioception and tactile to look at posture. This helps us determine these receptors for your vestibular are in your ear, and you've got 2. You've got the ortho organs, which detects linear motion, kind of like this. And then you've got your semicircular canals, which detect rotary rotation movement. And then you've got interoception. And this is the sense internally. So some of you may already know this because there's quite a lot of evidence coming out about it at the moment. This is around being able to determine noticing what's happening inside your body. And this can be affective emotions. So this could be like feeling happy, feeling sad, feeling anxious, feeling angry. And then you've got your homeostasis, which is, do I feel thirsty? Do I need the toilet? Am I hungry? Am I cold? So this has a really big important part to play in terms of internally in your body and your senses. They're in those organs inside your body. In terms of these senses, you have different thresholds. These can be different in every sense. So you have this, there's a terminology that we often say, a low threshold. And this means that the person doesn't need much sensory input into their neuron to respond. So the neurotransmission is very quick. So say, for instance, if I'm picking up a hot drink, if I had a low threshold, I would let go very quickly because I only need a tiny bit of sensory input because I've got a low threshold and the neurotransmission is very, very quick. If you have a high threshold, this means that the person needs much more sensory input for their neurons to respond. So the neurotransmission is slower. It's a lot slower. So if I had a higher threshold for tactile input and I picked up the hot cup, it would take me longer to let go. And I might even be inclined, I might even get burnt because that transmission is just not quite quick enough. So that is where we look at these thresholds as therapists. So it really helps us understand from the assessment what's happening within those thresholds. Really interestingly, the olfactory system is a very interesting system that I'd like to just quickly discuss. As you can see here in this lovely visual, smell travels very quickly to your brain. It enters, the olfactory nerve enters into your forebrain, not into the brainstem. Therefore, you get a much quicker response. So it's not having to travel all that way up the neurotract. So quite often smell can be one of our quickest responses to help us survive. So thinking about if you burn your toast your olfactory system will alert you immediately. It alerts us to danger. I've worked with some children that have had a very acute sense of smell, and it really impacted their participation, because certain smells that weren't really noticeable to neurotypical kind of thresholds would send them straight into that fight or flight, because their threshold was, they had a lower threshold. They only needed a tiny bit of response to get in, and it just sent them completely into fight or flight. So we had to work with that sense and to help them manage that within that environment, and also make those environmental modifications to help the child engage in that learning in that certain provision that we were supporting them in. But people didn't realise this until we really unpicked the neuro behind his olfactory system. And also smells are linked to memory as well. So sometimes, such as some of you may love the smell of lavender, some of you may hate the smell of lavender, and it'll be associated with different memories. And that's very powerful, and it can have quite a big impact on our behaviour. So it's just having a think about that. Smells can be used in really positive ways to bring on good memories, but also can be quite triggering for some other individuals. So it's quite a complicated sense, is smell. I'm just letting you know, I will come to the chat probably at the end. I'll get through the presentation, and then I can hopefully answer some of your questions at the end. So I'm trying not to give you too much information today. I just want to give you the kind of the basic facts, like as much as I can. Within each of the 8 sensory systems, there may be issues associated with modulation, which is also known as reactivity. This can be seen as fight, flight, or freeze. We need the brain to be calm and alert to help us learn and perform at our best capacity. So for like now that some of you are watching this, you might have a hot drink, you might have a fidget, you might be standing up to watch it, you might be stretching, you might be having a snack, you might be doodling. This is what you're doing to help you attend to this talk, to help you learn. You're trying to get that lovely calm and alert state to help you get the most out of this. Posture and praxis means motor planning, obviously, and posture. These are really important and often quite overlooked in sensory integration. Quite a lot of the time, people very much do see that reactivity, that modulation, that fight or flight behavior, because it's usually a lot more visual to see. Posture and praxis is a little bit more tricky. So with your posture, this is related to your vestibular system, on about good posture. So that is quite a lot of kids that I support can have challenges, and they can be quite slouched, and in school they can be like leaning on their head and their hand. Children with dyspraxia can often find this quite challenging. Hypermobility can also impact this as well. So it's just very tricky to kind of, especially if you're changing surfaces and going on a more unsteady surface, this can challenge your posture. And if you're not got a secure posture, this can be really hard for that individual. And you need to have a good posture, because for you to be able to use your hands, to be able to handwrite and use your hands in a really dexterity way, really like, to really get those fine movements, we need to have a good posture, because then it stabilizes our scapula and then our shoulders and here, and then that stabilizes our hands and our arms. So the more secure the posture, the better outcome we're going to have with our hands. Because if you think about it, as a big solid oak tree, they've got big branches that they're holding up. They've got a really nice solid core. They're holding those branches high. If you have a trunk that isn't as solid and the wind's blowing on it and it's bending, they can't secure those branches up. They can't hold them up. The fruit's dropping off them. So we need that good posture to help secure that, to help to use these. Praxis is motor planning. This is about your movements that you do every day. So this is such as me having a drink. I know I keep using this. That's motor planning. Me writing, dressing, walking, riding my bike, drawing, just moving through my environment. Motor planning praxis informs all of that. And quite often that's a big area that we will look at with kids and teenagers, and sometimes adults that we support. We look at that, what challenges have they got in praxis, and we break it down. There's lots of different areas of praxis. There's ideation, you've got you've got sequencing. So there's all these different areas that we have to assess to really pull out what is actually happening and what is their strength, but what is quite challenging for them in terms of praxis. And are they able to problem solve that? Quite often in interventions, I work with children around working on their praxis. Some kids have great ideas, but then they can't put the idea into practice. And then I work with them in that intervention to help them to be able to then plan it and then work it. And then they've got the idea, they've then successfully motor planned it, and then they've executed the task. And that's what we're looking at. But then they can have other challenges where they might not have the idea. And then it's around how we support them with that. So a really interesting area is praxis. Discrimination. This is the brain's ability via the senses to recognize and compare and differentiate between different sensory inputs. So for example, I'm holding this can and I know through my tactile discrimination that it's cold. I can interpret the temperature, that it's smooth as well, and that it's a cylinder. So that's my tactile discrimination telling me about this object. As you can see in the picture, there's a hand in a handbag. So when you put your hand in to look for your house key, your car key, and you're not using your vision or any other sense, you're using your tactile discrimination to find that key. You're looking at for the quality, you're trying to feel the qualities of it and discriminate it against other objects so you can recognize what that is. Like, what am I holding in my hand? To discriminate. You're using just your tactile discrimination. If you're having a pretty tricky day, you're feeling a little bit dysregulated and your reactivity is a bit high and you're not very modulated, how many times have people, I've done this, open my bag where I cannot find my keys because I can't use my tactile discrimination isolation because I'm not in a calm and alert state. So I'm needing to use my vision to open my bag and then look for my key to help. So this is helping my tactile because I'm not regulated. So people, adults, children, teenagers can experience difficulties and challenges in some of these areas or all of them. But we have to determine as an OT specialised in this area, what area is that? And it is a very comprehensive process because we have to carefully pull that out to see, is it just modulation or is it all three or is it more praxis? We really have to analyse that data that we get really carefully. So this is really important. We've all seen probably this before, the hierarchy of learning, Maslow's hierarchy of need. We are all sensory beings and we all need those lovely, solid sensory foundations at the bottom there. Our senses underpin the skills that that are necessary for us to executively function, which is basically perform to our best, academically learn, to be able to problem solve. This then impacts, so if these aren't well developed, this will impact our executive functioning. So think about now, when you're listening here, what are you needing to help you get to that lovely top of that pyramid to help you learn? What do you need in your home? Do you need a quiet environment? Do you need it warm? Do you need a blanket? Do you need a hot drink? Do you need to have a mint? Do you need to have a chair that moves slightly? You will do all these different things to help you being able to attend to the activity you're wanting to learn, to help you executively function. So if they're not well developed at the bottom, so if somebody has some challenges within the 8 systems, I know interoception isn't on here, but they believe that interoception is actually below and that one has to be well integrated for then these other 7 on top to be well integrated. You can still get to the top here. You can still executively function. However, it'd be a bit more like a leaning Tower of Pisa. So your foundations aren't secure. So your building's kind of wobbling like this. So you can get to the top, but it's very effortful and it requires a lot more energy to do that. And what we want to do is get these nice and secure, that lovely bottom up, working on those structures, working on that anatomy here. We want them nice and secure so then we can get to that lovely top executive functioning. So that is where we work with people, children that have challenges. It will impact those upper layers. They won't be as effective. They won't be as quick and as smooth. And what we want to do is make them quicker and smooth by doing that neuro kind of plasticity underneath. So an example could be thinking about an autistic child who might have been at school all day. What their school environment they've been in is that school environments are all very different. What do they have at home that supports them, and what do they have at school? So if a child's been at school all day and they mask pretty well, you will come home and you might take those demands off and make the environment very quiet, and you might make a lot of adaptations to support them, because they actually might be quite overwhelmed. They might need a bit of time to decompress. Not all children are like this, though. All children are different. Some children are fine in school and they don't cope well at home. Some are not fine in school and cope fine at home. Some are not fine in either. Some are fine in both. It really depends on that assessment that we carry out. But if you think back to the statistics, we know from research that 90 to 95% of autistic people have sensory processing challenges. So just keep thinking back to that. Keep thinking back to that. And the environment has a really big impact on this. So we talked a little bit about what input do you need to function. And we've said doodling when you're on training, maybe walking when you're listening to a webinar, that can help people, having a movement break, a hot drink, a fidget. I actually have a fidget in my lap that I use intermittently. You can have loops that can help cancel out background noise. You can have a standing desk, dimmable lights, softer lighting. So everyone's very different. Your sensory systems are different. You will pick things that you will want. So some of the behaviors you may see with some of your children or children that you support or family members or friends, you might see reactivity challenges. So those modulation challenges, that fight or flight or freeze. They might have poor attention, maybe poor concentration. They could be fidgeting more. They might struggle to manage their emotions. They might be avoiding tasks. They might appear unmotivated. They might have challenges in engaging in everyday activities such as self-care, so like bathing, showering, teeth brushing, hair brushing, eating, social participation. Going to parties can be really, really hard. Family and friends for some children, who, especially neurodiverse children, that can be really, really challenging for them. They want to go, but they're just too overwhelmed from the environment. So these could be sensory behaviours, but then please also go and get a specialist assessment with a multidisciplinary team to determine whether it is a sensory integration challenge, or perhaps it could be another medical reason, because we've got to remember not all behaviour is sensory. So I just want to remind you that that's why you need to have appropriately qualified OTs that provide this and make sure that you are interpreting it correctly, because they might end up referring you on to different providers, to NHS, to private, to psychologists, to rheumatology. It could be, there's lots of things that could be happening. So you have to have that really good medical overarching assessment to really understand what's going on for this child. So why is the environment so important to our functioning? So as occupational therapists, as an OT, I use the PEO model, which you can see here in my clinical practice. The environment has a huge influence on us as human beings and our ability to function. So we ask, is the person in the right environment to be able to perform their chosen occupation? The person refers to the individual. So for example, a child, with a child, it could be their skill, their interests, their motivations, their life experiences, their background, their cognition. The occupation refers to the activity or the task they're engaging in. So this could be education, work, personal activities, play, if it's a child. We consider the demands of the tasks, the required skills, and the expectations. So, for example, a child being able to be expected to learn at school. And the environment is the setting where the occupation occurs. So this includes the physical layout, the social setting, the cultural context, and so on. So as OTs, we ensure the interaction between these components fits. This is why they all overlap on this lovely model. And the person's ability should align with the occupational demands and the environmental conditions. And our role as OTs is to help clients regain or adapt occupations that suit both their abilities and their environment. We must also, amongst this, consider their sensory needs and their safety needs as well within environments. And We know that many neurodivergent individuals may experiences with challenges in sensory processing, such as like light, noise, smell. Think back earlier to what we've discussed in the slides, but also to the statistics. The evidence is there. We know this is happening. We know the statistics are telling us this. And now's a question to you as an audience. Have you ever struggled to concentrate at work, home, or even in school? Do you work in an open plan office, or are they smaller rooms, or do you work from home? Do kitchen smells bother you? Does lighting bother you? Do you bump into furniture often? Is a door open in an office or a classroom and letting noise all in from the corridor into your room? So just think about that. Now imagine that, experiencing that every day. If you were getting overwhelmed from all of these things like noise, smell, movement, visually over busy visual environments, how would that make you feel? Would you feel productive? Would you be able to engage in learning? So like now, if a fire alarm went off and you were listening to this, that'd be your fight or flight system would instantly come into play. And then you would really be struggling to listen to me. Or if the doorbell rings, or there's some noise in another room, or the lights went out, or the bright light came on, or a certain smell came in the room, would that distract you? Would you be able to learn? If this constantly happened all the time in your environment and you had some challenges in sensory processing, would you start to begin to feel unwell mentally and physically? This could be a constant barrier to that individual working to their full potential and also maintaining their physical and mental well-being, because when you're in fight or flight, you release cortisol in your blood to help you, that stress hormone, to help you act, to help you survive. And then adrenaline is then released to keep you there, to get you out of that situation, to get you away. This can be very physically damaging on your health if this is happening a lot of the time. So before labeling someone or a child as disruptive or difficult or challenging or underperforming, you need to ask yourself this question: is the environment supporting their ability to function? So the environment has a huge impact on our functioning, especially our sensory processing, and all of you will be different, and some people may have challenges across several systems. This can make these key impacts that I've put on here are what we see as therapists, what we're pulling out, what we're assessing. This can lead to lots of challenges engaging in education, work, if it's an adult, self-care, community access, social, leisure. The brain could be either receiving too much information, so think about those thresholds that we talked about earlier, or too little on sensory input, or it could be a mismatch of information, or it could fluctuate. Everyone's really different. And then as an OT who's trained in sensory integration, we then help clinically identify and analyze those sensory patterns using that robust evidence-based practice drawn from our comprehensive assessment. This then helps us determine the most effective intervention to follow based on our clinical findings. So it helps us consider questions like, does this autistic child present with a somatodyspraxia pattern? Is there reactivity in a certain sensory system? Are there challenges in bilateral integration in praxis? Could this be dyspraxia we're seeing? Is the child compensating by relying on another sensory system? So it makes us think about all these questions that are happening and how they're presenting. And finally, we consider what environmental changes are needed to help support them. So this is going on for the child internally, and we know that from the neurosciences it's happening. What can we do about it to help them? We often do a lot of intervention, which I will talk about further on. So we are all sensory beings and our neurological threshold needs need to be met. So for instance, before I did this webinar, I went for a nice hour-long walk with no music on, no noise, getting some lovely active proprioception, getting some lovely movement, getting all that lovely, my muscles were all contracting, getting all that lovely active prop, which is, it helps dampen down any kind of fight or flight or cortisol. It counteracts that in the brain. It doesn't travel up the same neurotract the other way the other sensory systems do. So that really helped me then come into this nice calm alert state to be able to then talk to you all. So that was my neurological needs threshold that needed to be met. So an environment is essential for the brain. So if it's designed poorly, it can have a real negative impact on our overall functioning. So think again back to your home. Think about education. Do any of these apply to you or your child? Think about that environment. What do you think could be done to help? So these are some examples of from the research that's coming out about environments of what we need to consider. So if there's not enough in an environment, it can actually is called sensory deprivation. There's need to have refuge opportunities, so somewhere that you can go and relax and escape and need some time to recharge. Sometimes people need transitional objects to move from environments. If you become too overwhelmed, this is the sensory you can get migraines. Some people can have seizures due to this. It can impact our cognition. And we all need sensory opportunities through the day to help us with our mental and physical well-being. And this can be really subtle things for most people, but other people it might need a bit more. So just think about that for now. So you'll all be different. You will all have different sensory needs. And like I said, think about what do you need to be productive at work? What do you need to be at home to help you recharge? And what environments do you tend to avoid? And this often will tell you a lot about what you are seeking to help manage your arousal. If you've had a stressful day, if you've had a difficult meeting, if your child's had a tricky day at school, they might need a bit more movement. You might go for a walk. They might need to go and have a bit of rough and tumble play. They might need a hot drink. They might need to go and play an interest of theirs, which could be building an obstacle course, playing on the Nintendo Wii, doing some colouring. Could be, I don't know, teenagers Warhammer, playing on Candy Crush. Some people might need to wrap themselves in a soft blanket. They might want to go sit in their little dark den. Some kids, they might want to go to the bedroom. As an adult, you might want to go sit in a quiet room. You might want to eat some crunchy snacks. Sometimes kids who might want some more crunchy snacks to help regulate, spend some time outside climbing on monkey bars, might need a cuddle. As adults, we sometimes go to the gym. We might take a hot bath with some nice smells in it. Everyone's really, really different, but these are all strategies that we're using to help if we've had a particularly challenging day to help us re-regulate. So have a think about, earlier we've been talking about, I know I've been using an autistic child as an example. Think of if they've been to a big birthday party with lots of children, or they've been at school and it's been a very busy day, the assembly, lots of things going on, some change. What do you think they might need to help them feel regulated and calm after they've experienced that environment? What might they need from a next environment to help them? So these are some general ideas. They're not specialist interventions. They're just some simple things to consider at home if your child is struggling to regulate after returning from school or after a community outing, or they're just struggling to manage different environments. Soft lighting is a great one. You can make these dimmable. You can use different bulbs. That can be a really quick win in a home environment to help. And also at school, they can make these adaptations as well. Glare from windows can be reduced by blinds or curtains. Again, another really simple strategy there. Reducing noise. Can you shut the door? Noise travels everywhere. And I think being more alert to noise, the TV on, can we shut the door if there's a phone call going on in the other room? Sometimes as well, children will make more excessive noise to drown out noise. They might not like noise, but they might make a lot of noise themselves because they might be trying to drown out that other noise. So think about noise. Smells. How can they be isolated? Can you shut your kitchen door, open a window? Is there ways you can isolate those smells? Maybe not using strong scented cleaning products if they are particularly, if you're noticing your child is quite sensitive to smell. Quiet space. If you've got the opportunity for a quiet space in your home with activities that your child enjoys, that's great. Somewhere they can go and they can retreat and engage in their preferred interests. Soft textures like fluffy blankets, cushions, teddies are lovely ways of helping children regulate, and adults use it as well. Really lovely way of getting that nice input through the tactile system. Can you build in a natural movement break if possible? And if as long as your child doesn't have any significant medical needs, obviously always consult your specialist team if you're involved with anybody. But if not, can they walk home from school? Can they scoot? Can they bike? That movement naturally will help that regulation. Can you adjust the heating? Sometimes temperature can be triggering for some children. So think about that, because some children don't recognize when they're hot and when they're cold. I've worked with some children that have gone out in the winter and wearing shorts and a t-shirt, and they genuinely state they cannot feel the cold. I've had other kids wearing layer upon layer upon layer, boiling hot day, I'm not hot, and they're sweating excessively. Are they able to interpret that temperature? But in the environment, you can, turn that down, adjust it, open a window, think about that. How can we get that temperature nicely a regulating level? So what we offer at OT for me is we offer obviously assessments, treatment, audits, and training and workshops. In terms of assessments, we really strive to support children and adults with clarity and support around sensory processing. And we also do diagnostics with psychology on autism and dyspraxia, both for children and adults. We're really passionate about wanting people to understand their brains and not pathologize them. And we want to look at, as OTs, we want to look at occupational functional strengths and challenges. And we want to give you recommendations and practical hands-on strategies and adaptations and make environmental changes to support those ongoing health needs. The environmental audits are really interesting. These are really, really useful. We often do a walkthrough of, especially in education and businesses and at home as well. We look at ways of making small changes on the best evidence base to make it more supportive, not just for neurodivergent people, but for everybody. We've done lots of different audits in schools. We've done it with the NHS and the mental health services. We've done it at universities, within homes as well, just to make those small changes can make a huge difference on function for everybody. We do lots of different treatment, which is also known as intervention, and we offer a wide range of interventions tailored to the child or to the adult, depending on what their results are from the assessment. We also have a pathway looking at attachment and trauma. So we have a specialist in our team who works with adoption and foster services, but also birth families as well. Some lovely interventions there that have just started this year. One of our main interventions is air sensory integration therapy, which we're very passionate about. And this is one of the top 5 new evidence-based interventions recommended for autistic children. It's a lovely intervention. It's strength-based, it's child-led, it's interest-focused, and it uses a neuroscience. It uses that neurodevelopmental approach up, where the therapist is carefully scaffolding around them to meet that fidelity measure to get those lovely neurological changes, to help make participation, like everyday occupations, easier, to make life easier for them. We do some therapeutic coaching, and we do OT, lots of different occupational therapy intervention and groups where we work on really small little groups that do a lot of social interaction and working and getting those children regulated to have positive social interactions. The aquatic therapy is basically the same as ASI, but in the water. So we do ASI on the land with suspended equipment, but aquatic therapy is a wonderful session, and it's within a hydrotherapy pool that is meeting fidelity ASI in the pool. We also do training and workshops. So we equip schools, families, parents, carers businesses as well on spotting those sensory needs and trying to help support reducing that burnout, but also kind of building that culture of inclusion as well about environments and the importance of that, the strengths of neurodiversity and how we can be an inclusive society for everyone. So that is everything today. I'll have a little look in the messages now and see if I can answer them. But if I don't get round to answering your message, apologies. I will try my best. And if there's any ones that are complex, I will probably get you to call me. So the first one, can I ask if a child is struggling at school and you're getting the feedback, what's the best way to deal with this? Sorry, all that disappeared. Oh, there we go. Best when they return home. I want to acknowledge what's happened, but her self-esteem. So if your child's struggling at school, definitely put some of those environmental changes in and maybe take some of the demands off. That could really help. You could put some of those generic strategies in that we've discussed today. I think it's thinking about if they're feeling a bit overwhelmed, they just might need a bit more time to regulate in preferred activities they want as well. But what that's the kind of main things that I would do. Is there any more chats? Let me have a little look. I'm going to have a look. Here we go. I'm going right back to the okay. So I can see that there's an adoption social worker from North Yorkshire. Welcome. Please get in touch with Marion. She's done some training recently for the social workers in York and further afield. She'd be great for you to contact. Can see there's lots of people from lots of different, there's lots of people here from lots of different places. That's wonderful. Great. Loads of different people. So I'm going through it. 4 children, 2 sensory seekers and 2 sensory voiders, which can be hard. Oh gosh, I bet. Please get in touch with us. We might be able to help. It's tricky when everybody can trigger everybody, and there's lots of ways that we can support you with that. I'm just reading. Andy from Sandboard's got, we developed and supply unique sensory profiles. Oh, I've gone down. Sorry, my chat just disappeared. Sensory projects used by 14 police force in UK custody. Oh, Andy, I'd be really interested to talk to you because I've done a lot of work in secure services and police, and I'd love to have a conversation with you around that. And I'm wanting to do more research around supporting this for sure. I'm just going through to see if there's anything else I can help. Yeah, there's some good, really nice sharing on there, guys, to help each other. I really like seeing that. Yeah, my child relaxes with loud music. Yeah, that's because they're probably seeking more. Yeah. Yeah, and if she's going between avoiding and seeking, it could be the demands of that environment at the time, and she might have some sensory processing challenges that her systems are being quite different at different points of the day. That might need a bit more unpicking from an assessment. And I think that's really important. We don't want to label behavior. We need to understand these kids. We need to know what's going on for them. They need those good assessments so we can really unpick what's happening for these kids. And that's why it's so important that sensory isn't just looked in isolation. I'm just going through a bit more. Let's have a little look. Yeah, please. Yeah, we do. In terms of with the police, we do some separate things aside with that. So yeah, do get in touch if anyone's come from that area, because I know this has been quite child focused today. That's interesting about going to church, yeah, and sensory nightmare. Yeah, it really can be. And I think it's about, can the church make an accommodation where they can potentially make a quieter space for them, and that they're freely to go in there and out if they're finding it too much? Or can they wear headphones in the church, or get the church to come and talk to us? We're more than happy to provide some advice. Yeah, we're going to do some more holiday clubs for definite, and we do small group sessions. We've got some October groups coming up at the moment. And we have got some more webinars actually coming up about different topics as well. I think the next one's about hypermobility and EDS and POTS, if anyone's interested in that. I'm just trying to go through and read some more. Let's see what else we've got. Sorry, there we go. Can I ask your child's struggling at school and you're getting feedback once? Yeah, we've talked about that one. Talked about that. Thank you. No, I'm really hope that was helpful. Yeah, please, like, if you have any other questions, we are more than happy to answer them. I'm getting involved in a lot more employee support work, a lot more reasonable adjustments at work, workplace kind of supporting young people basically into the workplace, because these kids are going to grow up and we need to support them. So please get in touch if we can help with that, for definite. Yeah, and I think just please keep your eyes open, because we're really wanting to just share more about the specialities that we work in here and how we can kind of give more information out, and kind of educate people more on the kind of areas like sensory processing the environment. We've got next year we've got an attachment and trauma webinar through the sensory lens that Marion's going to run, and we've also got one that we're doing about aquatic therapy. We've got one about interoception, that we deep dive into interoception a bit more with some strategies. We've got about hypermobility and how to just to understand it, because a lot of people don't understand it. What are the conditions? We're going to talk a bit more about supporting people in the workplace as well. We want to do a special one on schools. So please keep your eyes peeled for webinars that are going to come out, and thank you for all attending, and yeah, please get in touch. I'm not going to the OT show, unfortunately. I would love to be there. I've just seen the comment come up. Yeah, I would love to go there, but I'm very clinically busy. I have a big clinical caseload at the moment, which is wonderful because I love the work that I do, but it just doesn't free me up. The webinars are all going to be on the website. So our amazing social media guy, Carl, is working really hard behind the scenes, and he's going to put all of these on the website with the links on it. So I'm hoping that you can see them for the next year, all the webinars. They're going to be monthly, every Wednesday for free over lunch, and you'll see each topic, and they'll all be recorded as well. So yeah, thank you for attending. And yeah, the newsletter will have the information on as well, and that's going to be really helpful. But also, yeah, keep your eyes peeled. I'm also hopefully doing some research next year, which will be themed around more neurodivergent children that might have more interactions with the criminal justice system. So I'd be really pleased if anyone's in that area that'd like to reach out, because I'm hopefully going to hear about that in December and then start in January. So there's lots going on. We're very passionate, OT for me, about good quality research and about applying that evidence base to everything that we do. But yeah, that's everything for today. And please keep in touch. Any other questions? If you feel like I haven't answered any, please just give me an email or book a call in with me, because I appreciate sometimes on chats, questions can get lost and sometimes they might be a bit more complicated and need a bit more unpicking. So we'll just do a bit of a triage with you on the phone just to see what's happening. But I'll finish that for today if there's no more questions. And yeah, thank you all for attending, and I'll end it now.